On the surface level, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is a wacky story full of crazy hijinks, insane powers, and incredibly fun battle sequences, the likes of which have never been replicated in any other form of media. However, on a deeper level, JoJo's has always been a story about fate. And while that's not exactly going to be the premise of this video, it is really important to talk about fate, rebirth, and themes like life and death to fully understand a character that I think no one understands. I wanted to talk about this time the best JoBro in the history of JoJo's, aside from maybe Kishibe Rohan from Part 4. I love that man so much. I'm talking about Weather Report from JoJo's Part 6. Since Netflix hates the community enough to release JoJo's Part 6 in 3 parts, completely getting rid of the weekly uploads of the JoJo Friday thing that the community's been loving for years, and because they locked it in Netflix jail, now is a good time to tell you that I finally watched it. Yeah, if it would have been coming out every week, I would have been up to date with it with everybody else. I would have just been watching it with everybody 1 week, one episode at a time. I would have gotten involved with the community and all that. But no, Netflix was like, screw the community. This is how we're doing it now. I don't understand why that's how they're doing it now, but it is. They're released the entire JoJo's Part 6 in 3 chunks, and I feel like they crippled the fan base because of it. This isn't a video roasting Netflix. This is a video that I wanted to talk about Weather Report because I feel like JoJo's Part 6 is an incredibly underrated part of JoJo's. For those of you that are unaware, watching JoJo's as the parts have been coming out in the anime, you have the manga readers out there twiddling their mustaches talking about how JoJo's Part 6 is bad. Look, maybe that's not right. Maybe that's just the impression I've been getting as an anime-only JoJo fan. But Part 6 was phenomenal. Like, I'm not doing a whole little ranking thingy right now. I'm just gonna say that I think Parts 2 and 4 are S-tier anime. Parts 3, 5, and 6 are A-tier. And Part 1 is B-tier. Which is still high, but not as high. And the reason why I wanted to say all of this is because the biggest curveball to me was the character Weather Report. I find a lot of anime are really powerful in regards to their character building and their overall cast. And I'll be honest, when it came to JoJo's Part 6, I feel like that's kind of where it was lacking for me for a while. While I like Jolene, Hermes, and Foo Fighters, I'm not gonna say that they exactly enthralled me as a main cast goes. Even characters like Emporio, who I eventually grew to like a lot more, in the beginning was just like a gimmick character that I did not understand why this dude even existed. I like Anastasia, I think he's awesome. However, Weather Report for me takes it over the top and actually allows me to establish JoJo's Part 6 cast as a good JoJo cast. Now, for reference, while I like Jolene, I feel like she's the weakest JoJo since Jonathan at this point. And I know that none of this is super relevant. I just wanted to tell you my expectations going into this, how I actually changed those expectations as I was going through the series, and how those expectations were blown apart again by Weather Report. Okay, I feel like this is a lot of prep work in order to start talking about Weather Report, because I'm thinking of doing an entire separate video on how no one understands JoJo's Part 6's ending, because God, that was beautiful. To talk about Weather Report first, we have to understand a little bit more about the theme of fate and about the theme of life that takes place in JoJo's. So, fate is a much broader spectrum. If you've been paying attention to the JoJo's parts, even though they seem completely separate, obviously these themes of fate and the string of fate stretches through the entire series. How you have these two cataclysmic enemies, you have the Joestars and Dio in Part 1, and how their bloodlines and actions literally cause the events of every part to come. Part 2 is also based on the Joestars against the impact that Dio's made on the world. Part 3 is again fighting Dio. Part 4 is a town that's all of a sudden getting all sort of crazy stand abilities because of Dio that the Joestars have to take down. Part 5 is about Dio's son, and it keeps going on and on and on in this incredibly interesting fashion, talking about this crazy fate and how fate will always have the Dio line and the Joestar line constantly clashing. And that's not the only part of fate. I think Part 5 did fate best in regards to the final arc, the Rolling Stones arc, and I made a whole video about that when Part 5 came out like years ago, back on my main channel. I'm moving my analysis stuff to Nuxanor, but back in the day, I used to do this stuff, and I talked about that at length there, and I don't really want to get into that here. I just need to mention that because the reason why fate is so important in regards to the Weather Report character is because fate separated Weather Report and his twin brother Poochie, and fate reunited them as arch enemies. The strings of fate keep pulling and vibrating and telling you different messages as the stories go along. No one really knows their fate. No one knows why some people are drawn to others, and that leads the question, do you believe in gravity? Which sounds like a good meme, but it's just basically talking about how different characters are attracted to other people and how fate can cause people to bump into each other, even though, logically speaking, it makes no sense and it shouldn't be viewed as any more than a coincidence. So, talking about fate in regards to these characters, it's fascinating to see how even with neither of the characters necessarily intending to, both Weather Report and Father Poochie's fate are completely intertwined with each other, and it's gonna result in both of them killing each other. It's a really tragic story if you think about it, and if you think about what fate means, how true human actions are super important and super powerful, and no matter what you do, the impact of others could change the way you think. However, your fate will be entwined no matter what, and that is very, very shown as this story progresses. But I wanted to save the major theme of Weather Report for a little later, because now I'm going to tell you a little bit about his story. I'm sure all of you that are watching this video actually know his story, but I'm going to tell it to you anyway, and I'm going to highlight certain moments that I think are really important, because Weather Report is a character that is so intrinsically tied into the theme of death and rebirth that I love to see in JoJo's, because it also obviously has a lot in common with the fate themes that keep showing up. You know how all the Dio keeps getting freaking reincarnated time and time again? Either his actions, his wounds, his followers, or himself somehow gets incarnated to cause havoc to the world time and time again. And that is the fate of the Joestars, to keep fighting him. So death and rebirth have a lot to do with fate in how JoJo likes to express it. So let me tell you a little bit about Weather Report. As a child, Weather Report had a twin brother, Poochie, and Weather Report was stolen by someone when he was merely an infant, because this lady's child died at childbirth. She was very sad, and she stole this twin from his bed, and she raised him as her own. Very sad stuff, I know, tragic. Anyway, he didn't know anything about it. He always had a very, very keen sense of justice. He was a good man. He was a poor man. He was someone who worked as much as he can. He went to school and he worked part-time just to make ends meet. Meanwhile, Poochie grew up in this massive mansion, a glorious place. He eventually meets Dio, who of course changes his life, as Dio tends to do to everyone, me included. I mean, if nutting to Dio counts as changing your life, then my life's been changed. What can I say? The man's a specimen. He's beautiful. All right, I get ahead of myself. The point I'm trying to make is Poochie eventually learns the fact that he has a twin brother that was stolen at birth. And he learns this because he's a priest and some lady does this confession, but he can't tell anyone because as a priest, your duty is to not reveal the confessions of the people confessing. Otherwise, no one would confess. It's a pretty basic theory here in regards to confessionalism. So anywho, he figures out that he has this brother, but he can't tell anyone because he was told in confidence. And when he tries to figure out more about this brother, he finds out that this brother is dating his sister, who fell in love with him. Yeah, the reason why this is very, it's cute that it happens in Florida and, like, you know, happens a little bit in the western United States. He's dating his sister. He doesn't know because it's his sister too. A little awkward. As Poochie would say, it's a bit of a sin in the eyes of God. And he's like, all right, dude, I have to break these people up. Now, I can't tell him he's my brother because, you know, confession stuff. But I have to break them up because they're siblings and it's cringe, all right? Even Poochie understands that this is cringe, all right? Listen. Not a good look for all those goddamn incest anime out there, but it's cringe. What can I say? Anyway, Poochie hires a private investigator to break them up, and the private investigator does some digging and finds out that, guess what? Weather Report's dad? Well, stepdad, not actual dad, because, you know, he was stolen at birth, but his stepdad, who the PI thought was his actual dad, was a black man. And this took place in a very, very sad time in America. Not that America's a beacon of light and morality today, but it was even worse back then. So this PI gathers together all of his KKK friends. Yes, I know in the anime, it looks like he just gathers a lot of racists, but in the manga, they're actually wearing the whole KKK hoods and everything, and they beat the living crap out of Weather Forecast, as they call him in the dub. It's very bad, it's very brutal, and it definitely hits home. Like, holy crap, dude. Racist depictions in anime. hardly ever do this well to really show the decrepit moral vacuum that some people have in their hearts. So, Weather Forecast is beaten to inches from life and then hanged. Yeah, so he turns out to be a Giga Chad, so even hanging him doesn't kill him, because absolute freaking mad lad. However, his girlfriend slash sister at the time sees this and is like, oh dang, he dead. So she ends up so sad. She wishes she was like the rain, just someone that could calmly exist and not need to feel. She would never feel again, and because of this, she threw herself off a cliff to her death, only to be found later by Poochie. Weather Report wakes up, the love of his life dead. He blames partially himself, partially Poochie, who called the PI, and the last thing he heard her say was how she wishes she was like the rain. At this point, Poochie's stand awakens. He takes Dio's Freudian bargain. He obtains a stand that can preserve his sister's memory, and at the same time, Weather Report obtains a stand that can become the rain. And from this moment forward, these two characters' fates are completely entwined. Now, let me tell you a few interesting pointers just at this point. Just right now. Surface level, what's going on? Okay. When it comes to the themes of death and rebirth that we see so much in JoJo's, you have a character who was born into this world and for some reason denied his heritage. His love dies, her memories get reborn, and he becomes reborn as a person at this point who wishes he was dead. He tries to kill himself time and time again, but he just can't. Weather Report, his stand, keeps saving him. He throws himself off a cliff, and the winds help lower him down safely. He tries to shoot himself in the head, and all of the bullet chambers are full of water, and none of the bullets actually fire. He tries to drown himself, but the waves always carry him to shore. His powerful ability keeps him living, and it blurs the lines. What does it mean to be alive? What does it mean to be dead? He wishes he was dead, yet he continues to wander. He wants revenge from his fated enemy, and he eventually finds him. They clash, and once again his memories are stolen. So at this point, he is a husk of the person that he used to be. He is a man incarcerated, imprisoned, with no memories, no idea of his identity. Is that being alive? Once again, you hit this idea of death and rebirth. He's a character reborn as a new man, someone with no memories, a goofy guy walking around on his tiptoes with some cool powers that he doesn't really understand how to use. Powers that, when are released full force, when he is fully at rage, it causes these crazy rainbows to appear that makes everyone in the city turn into snails and die. Alright? It's pretty dark, okay? I'm not gonna get into the specifics of the physics of it because I'm not gonna make believe it makes complete sense even after the explanation. But the point is, this is he's a walking disaster. Even when he finally gets his memories back towards the end of the series and everyone's expecting him to be a bad guy, for him to be on Poochie's side, he's not. He is still the antithesis of Poochie. He is still his arch enemy, and he is still going to fight him to the death again. So with this crazy arsenal of powers, with his righteous vengeance on his side, he goes to face Poochie to kill him, to take revenge, and he asks his friend Anastasia to kill himself after the fight ends, because he knows that he can't kill himself. Weather Report will keep saving him. He needs Anastasia to kill him in order to turn off his stand power to stop causing havoc and tragedy to all the people around them, turning them into snails. Dude, this man lived the most tragic life ever, but his life is constantly dying and rebirthing. It's constantly explaining different states of being that he's in throughout the story. Is a man who's treated as a less than human being by the KKK, is that considered a living person? Is someone whose love dies right before them breaking his heart into pieces? Is that person alive? Is a person with no memories alive? Is a person causing death to the people around them and can't take his own life? Is that living? So eventually, as the fight keeps winding down, where both Poochie and Weather Report have their own destinies and have their own fates, Poochie eventually kills Weather Report. Weather Report wins the fight. He has him there. He has him there! God! But Jolene manages to accidentally run a car over them, and Poochie gets the upper hand in the last second and kills Weather Report. In the saddest twist ending of a fight ever, Weather Report earned that win! But that's not where Poochie was fated to meet the end of his days. In his dying breaths, Weather Report used Poochie's stand to take his memories of his ability and put it into a disc that could be used at a later time, which he entrusted to Anastasia, who entrusted to Jolene, who sacrificed herself in her final battle against Pucci to entrust to Emporio, who can go through the entire crazy time loop that happens at the end of part 6. God damn it, I hope you watch the goddamn show, because otherwise this will make absolutely no sense with you. As it reaches its singularity point, as the entirety of the universe meets its end and restarts again from the beginning. Yes, JoJo's is a very weird anime, and it doesn't matter because it's awesome. And in their final battle, the final clash, Emporio, this little kid who with useless powers, against Pucci, a man who can control time. He uses the weather report stand so that the stand could be reborn again, and he can utilize it in a way that even Weather Report himself would have never figured out to be able to use. Only some geeky kid like Emporio would have been able to use Weather Report in the way that it needed to be used to take down Pucci and to restore the world to be in a better place than it ever was. Weather Report's legacy was to take this man down, just like Pucci's legacy was to take down Weather Report. It is a tragic convergence of fates. Their fates were intertwined and they both needed to end each other. Pucci's on his path to attain heaven and create a new world, and Weather Report to be completely rebirthed and only be able to become the person he is because of the friends he made along the way. Because of who he was, because he was a person who had no memories, because he had to forge bonds from the very beginning with all these new people and make all these new allies, was he able to become the new person that he was when he got his memories back. Because his memories that he got back, they were only built upon the friendships that he's made in prison. The people like Jolene that impacted his lives and made him feel differently and think differently. The theme of death and rebirth is an incredibly prevalent one in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, in part 6 especially. And the character that can carry out this legendary legacy the best, the one who is the most thematically relevant in the entire main cast, is this goofy looking dude walking on his tiptoes with a flat top buffalo hat with horns. This goofy man is the most powerful character and the most impactful character in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Stone Ocean. So prepare to cry, because I see a man who tried to do everything right, who really tried to make all of his actions count, and all of his actions at the end of the day were completely meaningless, merely pawns in the hands of fate. Even though he managed to save the day, was it really him or was it fate that guided them to do so? It wasn't his strategy to give the stand to Emporio, who would know how to use it in a future reality to save the world. Obviously not, but it was his fate to be able to do so, and for him to become the harbinger of this new dawn. But he never stopped fighting. Whether fate exists or it doesn't exist, in the JoJo's universe it clearly does, but in ours, whether it does or doesn't, Weather Report is the perfect character to really teach us a very, very hard-hitting lesson. At the end of the day, he was subject to his fate, it's true. But due to the connections he made, due to the friends he had, due to the relationships he built, due to him trying to be just and do the right thing, no matter how much tragedy and heartbreak he went through. You could sum up him saving the day purely to that being his fate, but you could also say that it's because of the genuine person that he was. Perhaps every single one of us is beholden to our fate. Perhaps we are nothing but pawns in the grand cosmos of the universe pushing us forward, and there's nothing we can do about it. But on the off chance, the slight chance, the very infinitesimally tiny chance that our actions actually do matter, we need to make the absolute best of them. Thank you so much for watching. This is why Weather Report is one of my favorite characters in the JoJo universe. This is why no one understands Wes Blue Marine. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you want me to make another one, I'm thinking of doing a whole No One Understands JoJo's for the whole part 6, especially with the ending, because I thought the ending was fantastic. I know a lot of people hate on the ending. I thought JoJo's part 6's ending was, it was a perfect send-off for a perfect series. I love JoJo's so much, and I'm so happy I was able to make this video. Hope you enjoyed it all in all. Have yourself a most wonderful evening. Like and subscribe, and stay weird, fam.